Welcome to the Scaleup Valley podcast, where we bring the best tech leaders in the world to help you scale your SaaS business from 2 million to 100 million ARR. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Conrado Lamas, Head of Marketing at Signaturit. Conrado, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Mike. You pronounced it correctly, Conrado Lamas.
That's awesome. For the ones who don't know, I'm Portuguese, so I speak a little bit of Portuguese. It's my native language, and so it's a little bit easier for me. And let's get to know a little bit more about yourself. So how did you went at Signaturit?
Yeah, so like most of the things in my life, by coincidence and good luck, right? I'm Brazilian, and that's why I'm called Conrado Lamas, and I've been here in Barcelona now for some years. Specialized without much planning in startup and marketing, really evolved in the field, got passionate about the topic. And this year, it's been 4 months now, I've been heading the marketing department at Signaturit. And it's being already learned a lot in 4 months. Is honestly what always excites me about working at this field. You can work so much in weeks and months, and it's been the case so far at Signaturit for sure.
That's awesome. And what about Signaturit? So could you give us a little bit an overview about what is Signaturit?
Yeah, Signaturit, the reason why we are growing so much and so quickly is because we are solving the problem of paper contracts, right? Everybody hates paper contracts. It's a waste of paper. It's a waste of our times downloading those PDFs, print and signing. So what we're doing, we are taking care of that cycle online, right? We're taking it digital the way it's supposed to be nowadays. It's scalable. It's you have a clear return on investment. Because everybody, we just know from our clients, and just because that's a problem that we all share, everybody's moving towards electronic solution when it comes to electronic signature. That's why we are growing so much right now, and the opportunity of growth is obvious.
Got it. And it's also critical nowadays that we live in the customer experience era to have a much better experience if you are a client or an employee, to just go through the process without having to go to the office and sign papers or send it to the post and wait for the time to get the documents on the right ends and at the right time. So I completely understand how painful it can be.
I always jokingly, but also very truthfully say that being marketing, I never felt stronger the strategy of educating your target. That we throw that a lot, right, in marketing. Oh, you have to educate while you're still doing marketing. But in our case, honestly, it's if we manage to educate quickly our target, because it's something that is in everybody's mind somehow, consciously or not. Like we all know paper doesn't make sense anymore. Everything has to go digital. So if we manage to talk to our target and say, don't you think you should do that electronically? The answer is going to be an obvious yes. So education is our number one priority, and it's just too obvious. It is working. It's going to work more and more.
That's awesome. And in terms of growth stage, so what is the ad count today, funding rounds? So what is the stage of growth?
Yes, we are 100 employees now and still growing. We have raised a Series A in February, and our total funding is 10 million, more or less, right now. And yes, growing a lot, very, very promising.
That's it. Awesome. And it's time to talk about you. We always go through some of the components that we think it's critical for any company to scale. First thing is personal growth of the leaders. Second is the growth and leadership development of the members of the team. Then it's all about strategy and focus, and of course, execution. So how do we get a direction done, and how do we learn as quicker as fast? So let's start with the first point. As you know, we have a lot of CEOs on the show, and it's always my number one obsession. So how do you ensure that you don't become the growth bottleneck of your own company? So how do you do this for yourself as the head of marketing of Signaturit? So where do you invest to assure that you don't reach to the level of your own incompetence, and you start becoming bottleneck of your team to keep growing Signaturit.
Look, as obvious as it might sound, Mike, I think it's important that you're conscious about that threat. So if you're able to question yourself, you're still professional, you still think you know a thing or two in your field, but I think it's healthy to always keep in mind, like, may I be a problem? It might be the case that I'm doing something wrong, or and probably over communicate a little bit and actively ask that to people. I think I always respect a lot the people, even the people that I worked with, the ones that I had the best experience are always those ones that are humble enough just to know, because it's everybody facts that you don't know everything, that you might be wrong, and that two smart people might probably think better than one smart person. So being open to that questioning, I think, is essential. And I'm not overstating this, because in my professional experience, maybe it's still short, but in my professional experience, the real problems in teams and interpersonal relationship is always when you kind of have that feeling, well, that person doesn't really understand. He doesn't know, or she doesn't know what she doesn't know, right? Yeah. Which is, if you don't know what you don't know, there's no way you can improve. So for me, it's the baseline, and it starts all from there. So if you really take that for serious, you're conversating with your peers, you're creating those routines, right? You're probably, I know you're a big fan of that, you're probably adding those things to calendar. Now that we've worked for a while together, Mike is an advisor of the company. I think I do it more often.
Thanks for the disclosure for the audience.
Yes. No, well, no, it makes sense, and I honestly learned a lot from your work, and I'm thankful. But I think one of the biggest lessons is like adding things to the calendar. I used to do that, but not as much as I do now. But for example, like even monthly lunches with your peers, and I just try to make that commitment of really stopping and talking to people, and go to that question, right? I mentioned to you before, go to that question, like, not that you're going to do everything that people tell you to do, but it's like, is there something that I could improve, right? Is there something that you think it should change? So I think that posture, that positioning is important. If you don't have that at any level, it's hardly the case that you're going to question yourself in terms of, am I a bottleneck at the company or it's some other department, right? And it shouldn't be the case.
Right, and let's project, and this is really important, because we talk about a lot about business planning, and we talk very few time about life planning, and part of life planning is career planning and self-growth planning, which is how do we see ourselves in the next 3 years. So and how do we align this about what is a world-class CMO and the reference for you? So what are the avenues that you consider would be critical for you to become that world-class CMO? Not saying that you are not yet.
I'm very offended now.
but let's say to be even more world-class than what you are today.
That's a great question. I've always share with friends and peers that I've never been very good at those job interviews when people ask you, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Mm-hmm. Because I've never seen myself anywhere in 5 years. But there is a good side to it, which is my expectations have never been, I want to be a founder, a CEO, or a CMO in X amount of time. Mm-hmm. My expectations has always been, I think, twofold. One is constantly improve. For me, constantly improve doesn't mean constantly get raises or constantly be promoted. Is really Absolutely. This the idea of you're always learning, you're always evolving. Yeah. For me, it's super and beyond. I'm being truly honest about it. For me, it's essential to feel that. And even previous movements that I made, I think it was at a point where I felt that wasn't happening anymore. Okay, so that's number one. And second is the humbleness that I was telling you before, is the ability of questioning yourself, of being open to communications. So for me, those are the drivers of personal growth. And even with my team, and I want to believe we should talk to them, but I will believe I do a fairly good job there. That's what I try to transmit, and I repeat over and over again to teams. I want to, because I want that for me. I want you to feel you are evolving over time, no matter where. I do want you to be at Signaturit. I think we are offering great career opportunities here, but I don't want to feel that people are here because we coerce them to be here. And I want, also because I don't want that profile. I don't want the profile of people who are here because this is just their jobs, or, just their salaries, and every job is the same, or every company is the same. I want people that have that ambition of working at a good company, and that enjoy at some level the work that they do. So for me, that those personal drivers are important when thinking personal and team growth.
Got it. And that's the amazing connection between the personal why with the company why, or between the life plan and business plan, that as leaders we need to match in perfection. Because when someone is working for their own dreams, and as a consequence being part of a team that is working for something bigger and for a company dream, it's kind of a no-brainer. I want to be part of this.
You just have to align it. Here, one of the values that we have, and I think it's super important, is grow without ego. I love the sentence. We all know what it means. But there is one detail that I always emphasize. It doesn't mean that we should forget egos, in the sense that we should consider personal interest. And what I think the best thing about startups, or scale-ups in our case, is it's the growth opportunity. Like, we might be wrong, but we're all so sure about the growth that we expect in the following years, and it's going to mean growth for everybody who is in, and for everybody who has that mindset, for sure, because we need us for that growth to happen. So if you have that mindset, if you understand this, it's perfect matching, right?
Absolutely. And something that we also discuss a lot in the show, it's about building the perfect leadership. There is no perfect, but the best possible leadership team for each stage of growth, and having the courage to change the pieces, because someone who is very good on scaling the company, for instance, on marketing, from 5 to 10 million might not be the right person to scale marketing, or even not have fun and don't want to be on that cycle of the company from 10 million.
Yep.
So sometimes it's not about not being the right person to grow the company. Sometimes it's even not connected with the life plan or what that person has fun doing. But this is really difficult, because that person was also successful in helping the company grow from 5 to 10 million. So if it was not that person, we will not be there.
Yep.
And the same, something that we discussed a lot is, it's not only about a job that the CEO needs to do. So every single person in their functional areas, in their teams, in their cross-functional teams, needs to be a CEO of that domain. And to be a CEO of that domain is also to pick what is the right team for that stage of growth of the company, and having the courage to hire and fire as quicker as possible. And I'm being a little bit brutal here on firing, but sometimes it's even helping the person to find out what is the sweet spot again in terms of life plan and business plan, and what is the best for that person and for the company, because we are not machines, we are human beings, and the growth trajectories where we are in are really brutal, and sometimes are not very aligned with the human components, because it's not natural to grow at this pace. This requires a lot of courage, and sometimes to go even against our own fears and face them and overlap them. So how do you structure your team for this stage of growth of Signaturit?
Excellent. I'll start with that, and then I'll address what you mentioned before about the hiring and even firing. So the way we structure right now, when I got a Signaturit, we were in a previous stage. The department was smaller, and all the structured content, PPC, was reported under one branch. And I divided it in three. I divided it into a brand branch. Right now it's filled only with the events part, but we also have some agencies like a PR agency. There is a content branch, also together with design. It's more let's call it service branch that is serving the rest of the department, also the company in terms of content. And there is the performance part that where clearly the agencies of PPC and marketing automation is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's that moving is a no-brainer too, because the first thing you want to do as you grow is start getting more expertise on specific topics. So you have the people who are generalists, like even myself, you're always generalists at some points, but at some point you want to start like targeting what people really need to be good at. So that's the first movement. It's a movement that's it's ongoing, right? And in 2020, we are going to hire other positions to make that movement more granular, that expertise more granular. And in terms of the profiles and teams that you mentioned before, it's as hard as it can be. It's super obvious, and I think also is a consequence of the mindset that we were saying before. We, very naturally, like you said, we think about when we think about firing, using the straightforward word, or maybe moving people around. You think about other people, but it could apply to yourself. Yep. And I have honest conversations even with the leadership here, even with our CEO, is like, we are growing and we're going to grow so much. I wonder if I'm the person who's going to take this after a Series B, C, like, but I think if it was my company, I would like me to have that mindset. So, and that should apply to everybody else, including the people in your team. Of course, that letting someone go is not an objective per se, and it's always a hard decision. It should be taken carefully. And you should always consider alternatives. And also because there are many factors around one professional, not only data driven, but also emotional, and the impact of people in teams and importance of people beyond even their own teams. And you should take all those factors into consideration. But yeah, you might have to take that decision as well when selecting those teams. As you said, because we are scale-ups, we have to take those decisions quickly.
Yeah. Just to give some context, almost every time, if we wait a quarter or two to make a decision, it might be too late, because we still need to find out that replacement. We still need to explain to that replacement what looks like the challenge. That person still needs to understand the culture, to do the onboarding, to understand the vertical, the company, and to start producing results. So it's really with time frames of 12 to 18 months from rounds and from milestones, it's almost impossible to have the luxury of waiting 2 quarters. Just for the ones who think that sometimes leaders in this industry are a little bit too brutal in their decisions. It really needs a lot of courage. I think that the good part is trying to always be an example of leadership and doing that on the right way, respecting people, communicating appropriately. So it's not about avoiding to do it. We need to do that. It's trying to do this in the best possible way for the company, and for the human beings at the end of the year, of the day.
I'll tell you something, Mike. You know me a little bit. I don't think I'm the most brutal personality reference in the world. Honestly, I care a lot about the people in my team. I think it's part of why I might consider myself at any level successful. I work together with the team hand in hand. I think it's a matter of sitting down with people and being as honest as you can, and letting the team know what your position and what your drivers and what your objective is. And some decisions, if you manage to do that correctly, are going to be taken almost together. It's like, this is not happening. What's going on? What's the problem? How we can overcome this? And sometimes you find solutions, but if you don't, you have to take decisions. And it's not easy, but you have to.
There is also the good side of the equation, is having the courage to pay tribute to our teams for the very good job that they are doing, and to promote the high performers. That sometimes we also focus as leaders too much on mitigating the ones who are not performing and not promoting the ones who are performing a lot. And I think that's, again, it's kind of mitigating the weaknesses instead of leveraging the strengths. This is something that we also discuss a lot in the next topic, which is all about strategy and focus. So there is always, and nowadays, especially nowadays, within the growth arena, in hyper growth environments, that we have the discussion: should CMOs, should marketing leaders have accountability for revenue? And what is the balance between driving revenue and raising brand awareness? So what's your perspective on this? Should you have a revenue target or not?
I think I kind of take it for granted that at some point or level you have some revenue targets. I do understand that that shouldn't be a universal rule. In the end, not only marketing, but every department, every professional of a company is going to be driven by the objectives set by the company. So I can imagine lots of companies not over focusing on revenue, especially on some types of targets, of audiences, of ideal customer profiles and tiers, right? If you're talking, especially if you're talking about big enterprise companies, you know, low sales cycles and honestly, it's less important if who created the lead is you or sales or networking or partners or whatever. It's more about working together and get that deal closed. But again, at some point, I do believe there should be a connection to revenue, right? And then creatively thinking of how to measure that, because there is always a way to measure things. Some KPIs are easier than others, but I think so. And with other companies that I have this conversation, I think one big part of deciding how much of that revenue you should be accountable for me is type, but also very important how big the potential customer is. And again, if you're going for higher tiers, it's just too difficult. It's probably not wise to be obsessed about who in your CRM says lead source, inbound or lead source. Right. It's just not smart. So for me, in that question, that's a big factor, how big the fish or the whale is.
Got it. And what is the size of your team within those 100 Signaturit that
we are exactly. We are right now in-house. We are 9.
All right.
9.
So
it's have a lot of contributors.
And this happens a lot with SaaS companies. So you are kind of serving 3 segments: almost individuals, very small businesses, mid-size, and enterprise customers. Let's not add yet the complexity of different languages and different geos. But let's only start there. So with 9 people trying to specialize the team, and that's usually the growth tension. You already need to have almost 3 individual teams, each of them focused on just one of those segments. But you don't have yet critical mass to have those 3 teams, because you don't have enough people to build cross-functional teams across marketing to serve those segments. So how do you drive focus? How do you align the team? How do you focus the team in this complexity that we know that complexity is the great enemy of scale?
Mike, when I, like 4 or 5 years ago, a younger version of me was watching some podcast, some video conference from somebody, a product marketer at Facebook. I'd like to remember her name now because it's a pretty good, I kept that in my mind because her speech is very good, about the problem of prioritization. And I remember thinking, what an exaggeration, because it was like this well-seasoned professional that worked in so many companies, and she was working at Facebook by then. And you kind of, somebody tells you, oh, what is your biggest challenges? People tell you, oh, priority. It's like, oh, come on, you know, like, but God, it's totally my case now. It's so difficult to prioritize. It's so difficult to have a real sense that everything is important, but still having to make hard choices on what you're going to focus. I'm afraid there is no like single answer to that. Is almost a habit, and you do have the drivers, right? Okay, our main KPI is this and that, and by segments of your department that might vary a little bit. but you build that in the routine many times, and there is a lot of message, repeating the same message, and people, and I tell that a lot to the team, we should take that for granted just because we are human beings. I think it's very easy when you have something very clear in your head, because either because you have it or because you have your manager telling you that that's your main target, and you try to drive that to a bigger group, and it's hard, and you have to say that 20 times in different ways, through videos, through email, through Slack, but it's the way it works. We, like human beings, we need the same message to be repeated in many ways with GIFs and emojis all the time for something to be internalized, and it's part of the job. Yeah. That's the way I always say it. But yeah, prioritization is very, very difficult.
And usually creative people, and I think that someone who is on marketing has a very strong creative side, doesn't like to be boring on always repeating the same thing, and sometimes I think everyone is already got it, so I can't believe that I will get in that session or meeting again and repeat exactly the same. But we need to kind of go, and as you said, maybe exercising our creative muscle by repeating it in a different way. So giving different examples, but repeating exactly the same thing and the same priority week after week.
And orally, because I'm going to tell you this, I've seen over and over the situations in which people write those big emails full of details with the @ now, right? Like you @ Mike, and that's your responsibility. And now I send that big email, and it's your responsibility to memorize that and keep that in mind, together with the other 20 emails the other department sent you. But I don't buy that at all. First, I think it's very important that somebody is responsible for whatever message is, and I'm talking about one person. And that person has to understand that he or she needs to repeat that a lot. And I tell this to the team, there are some routines here that I created with presenting some premium content, like the case studies in which I literally stopped the company for 10 minutes. I'm a big believer of, I'm a big believer of that. Like, let me give you the example of case studies. Case studies, it's a video that's going to last 2 minutes. Everybody's going to watch that because videos are cool. You love that little break of watching the video. And for God's sake, it's your customer saying you're amazing. Everybody in the company is going to stop to watch that, either through email or on social media. And everybody in the company is going to waste other 2-3 minutes with their peer right beside them or at the coffee place commenting on how cool the video is. So can we do it for 10 minutes, everybody together, talking as a team, sharing the achievement of making a customer successful, and also using that energy to and afterwards you ask people, hey, let's share that everywhere, right? So now every customer story, when we share for the first time on social media, we have at least 100 likes and shares, just because of that silly strategy. It's no brainer. You don't need to do anything beyond getting everybody to talk. Respecting people's time is super important. So I was very careful of telling people it's going to take 10 minutes, and I try to take 7. Yeah. So I think that communication is essential, and when you conversate with people, and even here, I think over time I learned to value my soft skills, because being in marketing, starting 2012, I think it's part of it, because it was a different era, of course. I think the conversations were different, and nowadays it's being more and more valued, and I personally more and more value that ability of mobilizing the team and that emotional side of taking care of the team, and get, hey, let's watch this customer story and why it's important, and how come we sit down here every day and we lower our heads because we need to, right? We need to work. Let's take a look at the bigger picture. Look at what we are doing. We're getting this company that is making millions and millions of revenue to stop for 3 hours and record a video with us for nothing. We're not giving them anything. So that means something, right? We are doing something right here. That is super important.
This is a very good. It's part of one of the questions that we ask on the show, which is all about execution. So what are those small rhythms that makes all the difference? So nowadays, every company is doing or should be doing. I think that everyone is doing and nobody's doing, but the dailies, the weeklies, the monthlies, the quarterlies, the one-on-ones. So the annuals, it's all about a lot of discipline, but at the same time, there are very few routines that can really make a difference. And this is one of those that you are sharing that is providing awesome value for yourself and for the company and for the team. And that's also a good point to kind of explore something that the CMO of Drift, Dave Gerard, who has been on the show as well, was sharing this week, if I'm not wrong, that he was saying, if you want to be a world-class CMO, you need to do three things. First one is to show that you are impacting revenue. Second, telling a very good story about the main decision makers about how you are doing this. And third, having your sales team and every single department, but especially your sales team, saying how amazing is being your contribution for their results, how grateful they are because of your work. So how do you have this, how do you mitigate or how do you leverage the relationship with sales, with customer success, so important, with products in the company?
It's essential, right? These are the people who are, you're not going to be able, neither individually nor as a department, to deliver the work or the value that you're delivering. On sales, super clear in terms of leads, right? If you're like, you get the leads, you need sales to sell it. So you need to talk to them. You need to see how it's going on. Am I doing something wrong when something doesn't happen? Are you doing something wrong when something doesn't happen? So it's essential. And it's super funny that some relationships are famously known for how badly they can be, like sales and marketing. When, if you think about it, it really doesn't make sense. If sales and marketing is not aligned, if they don't have a good relationship, it's not gonna work. I think it's about keeping that profile that we talked about before. It's about being open. It's about not going arrogantly to the other person to tell you, oh, you have to do this. It's about being open about the issues and the problems. Very importantly as well, when identifying problems, everybody has problems. Every department has problems. Always. I think it's always very easy to pinpoint, oh, this is wrong. Look how ugly it is, and it's your fault.
Yeah.
It doesn't help. So it's being smart enough to still find the problems, point them out, and solve them while keeping that good relationship. But of course, relationship works both sides. So you also need that that positioning, that profile on the other side. But then we are talking about what we talked before, right? The right profiles, the right hirings, and who even knows the right firings. We always want to avoid that. So it's essential for that relationship to be kept in a healthy way.
Absolutely. There is also one of our guests on the show and in regular activities that we do with our clients, which is Christy Falterusso, which has also been talking with Signaturit as well in the last weeks, which is the VP of Customer Success of Better Cloud. And it's an amazing example of a very good relationship between customer success and marketing. And we are seeing everywhere, even the god of SaaS, Jason Lemkin, is being saying again and again that amazing companies are companies who have high rates of net revenue retention. So there is a huge opportunity already inside your customer base. And all of us are super focused on growth via new business. And not kind of serving the ones who already trust us and have so many problems that we can solve with our products and with our strengths. So it's really also healthy to not only have a great relationship with sales, but really with product, with customer success, even with engineering, with people, with finance. Of course, we can't do everything at the same time, and we need, again, to prioritize, as we were discussing before, but it's really important. And very quick question before we close this segment of strategy plus execution. We have mixed it, and it makes all sense. So when we define, and especially nowadays in a growth environment, direction and execution and learning quick is critical. And as much as we learn, as much as we execute, as much we need to understand. We have crystal clear what is the direction But of course, we can't lost ourselves in terms of direction when we are executing and get out of the way of the destination, which is all about the geos. So we know that this is a complexity mainly from some areas in the globe, like Latin America, if we exclude Brazil or Mexico, that have very strong domestic markets. Southeast Asia, if we exclude maybe Vietnam and Indonesia. But if we are in the US, India, or China, even with different cultures, even dialects, we can communicate in one single language. This doesn't happen in another parts of the globe. And I know that at this stage, Signaturit has clients worldwide, globally, but is very focused in terms of execution in Europe. How is it being, again, to have an extra layer of complexity, three segments, three sizes of companies, and also 2 or 3 geos to manage?
It's super hard. I think it was the hardest thing for me in these 4 months in the company, is that balance between targeting and prioritizing and not trying to grab too much land, but still having to consider those bigger markets and therefore having to consider that complexity. So I've learned a lot. I have to say, maybe we could talk about many things on things that I think work well for in that problem, in that case. But the squads experience has been especially interesting for me, just because of the group sense, or the group rhythm that goes on there, and that mix of the different departments. I think it's so it's almost like this mini startup inside your bigger startup, and you can see the leadership going on, and you can see the people taking responsibility, and I think it's super. Sometimes I envy that relationship of the squad. I almost like to have squads everywhere for everything. So that's been a very, very good experience when dealing with other markets, especially the markets that we are testing, let's say, that we are penetrating. Super good. So I definitely recommend that if people haven't tried it.
This is a huge contribution to the community. Thanks for sharing it. And I think it's also a huge opportunity to apply the same mindset to the different segments, to also have squads with someone from marketing inside. And I think that's critical, also the transition from a functional organization to a matrix organization, where the leaders of the functional areas need to be much more advisors instead of leaders. So the ones who lead are the ones who lead the markets and the business units and the segments, not as in the old way at 50 people or under 50 people, where we have a functional organization, which were the functional leaders who were moving the company forward. So now it's who is closer to the market, which is the guy who is meeting every single day individual clients or small business, or the guy that is meeting mid-size and enterprise, who know best the way to reach out to those customers and to serve those customers. And every single department of the company now and team needs to help those people to make their job done, because that's the way we will grow and add more value. Let's say add more value, and as a consequence, grow and be rewarded by our customers with their loyalty and with their choice for working with us.
I absolutely agree. I have to say that in my case, I'm learning that need of becoming more of the advisory of the team instead of executor, just because I don't have any other option as you scale and you need to be quote unquote everywhere, and it's just at some point you just start telling people, because like, thank you for leading this, you're doing a great job, because they are, and there is no way you can be there, and it's not desirable. If you're in a scale up, it's not scalable that the leader of the department is touching and executing everything. You want the people who do as good or better than you in specific areas to lead that, and almost tell you, you have the bigger picture, and you have the key strategy and the key execution part, but the person's gonna at some point, because they know better than market, like I said, they're gonna tell you, and we need this and we need that. Oh, okay, makes sense. Let's see where the resource is. If we can do it in-house, outsource, etc. So it's completely true.
Awesome, and we came to the end of the show, which is with one of our favorite questions of the show, which is, if you would have the opportunity to meet Conrado Lamas at the beginning of your career working as marketing leader with VC-backed companies, what advice would you offer to your younger self?
Yeah, it's always a great question. I think it's don't worry. Everything's gonna be okay. I'm happy that I've always been how'd you say, not comfortable or not quiet, or where I always like curious and always moving around. But I think on that personality, anxiety comes together as well, and you have to be careful. Now that I have a family, everything that is especially important, you have to keep healthy, and you have to keep that balance. I do believe it's important, work-life balance. So I would say this, I would be,
and
what you're doing is right, but don't be so stressed.
And just wanted also to give you a lot of credit, because you have been kind of starting your impact on Signaturit and having your second kid at the same time. So it's huge heads up
Thank you.
for you on
I'm
that.
proud of that. I'm also putting that on my resume, you know, putting on LinkedIn, like being dad of 2 kids for X amount of years now.
Absolutely. Conrado, it was really a lot of fun. Thanks so much for joining us and sharing your experience.
Likewise, Mike. It's always a pleasure conversating with you and learning from you.
Likewise.
I hope it's being useful to your audience, and we'll keep in touch.
And to our community, thanks so much for being on that side. Keep us informed about what we need to do in order to bring you the best and to help you more scale as quickly as possible from 2 million to 100 million. See you soon, and keep scaling.